Hi, as promised, I wanted to give you the remaining of the slides and explain them as if I would as I would have done if we were in class. So what I'm going to do is I actually recorded those videos. In the first video, I wanted to talk to you about when we were talking about setting standards, making sure you set high standards, because students will rise to the levels that you set for them. So if you set low standards, they'll meet those low standards. If you set high standards, they'll work for it, and it'll be more rewarding for you, and it'll be more rewarding for the student. So there's a video clip on that. Hope that you enjoy.
Trying to make, Mrs. Ortega, is I don't want to be the principal of the first school in the history of Los Angeles to lose its accreditation.
I'm the last person to say that this math department couldn't improve. But if you want higher test scores, start by changing the economic level of this community.
The purpose of this meeting is to review the recommendations for accreditation. Any suggestions? Anybody?
Yeah. I don't think I should be teaching math next semester. I mean, I was hired to be a phys ed instructor.
As I said before, we lack the resources to implement the changes the district demands.
Mr. Senzaki, you must have at least one comment.
This may not be the right time to say this, but I'm sorry, but I won't be coming back after Christmas. I got a job with aerospace.
How much money have we made? We have the remainder of the year before we're put on probation. Now, if we fail, we'll lose our accreditation.
If we fail, you can't teach logarithms to illiterates. Look, these kids come to us with barely a 7th grade education. Now, there isn't a teacher in this room who isn't doing everything he possibly can.
I'm done. I could teach more.
I'm sure Mr. Escalante has good intentions, but he's only been here a few months.
Students will rise to the level of expectation, Senor Molina.
What do you need, Mr. Escalante?
Ganas. That's all we need is ganas.
What's ganas?
The next two videos that you see are ones that I tried to play for you in class. The one I did play for you in class, but only some of you heard it and some of you didn't. But basically, they're really good teaching strategies that you can implement into your own classes. He's a little rough around the edges, Mr. Escalante, but he has some really good strategies. In the one video, you're going to notice that he's giving an analogy about boyfriends and girlfriends. And that really helps kids get drawn into the conversation. They're more interested in listening to what you have to say. If you can put information in that they can relate to, like sports, or if you can relate it to current events, or if you can relate it to their favorite entertainers, rappers, singers, movie stars, whatever it might be, it helps draw them into the conversation. Kids and people in general love talking about themselves, so if you can draw the students into talking about themselves and doing things or relating things to their own personal lives, that's really important. Remember that in the launch, you do need to include everyone in the class, so you want to make sure that you allow for scenarios to cater to different people in diverse situations as well. The other video I thought you'd find interesting. It's still Mr. Escalante in the Stand and Deliver. He's having the students learn about positives and negatives, and he does it by making some associations. He makes associations with going to the beach. He also makes associations from that musical rhythmic in multiple intelligence. You'll see that he'll have the kids repeat in a rhythm pattern, a positive and a positive, and so on and so forth. Positive and a negative equal, positive and a positive equal. This way, the kids are saying it out loud. They're developing a tune, a rhythmic pattern that they're trying to associate those words with. But that is a good example of using music, that musical, rhythmic, multiple intelligence into your classrooms. Hope you enjoy the videos.
Garcia.
So when I say Garcia, you answer, okay? Are your friends out of team?
I audited them to come with me. So that's recording right now?
I'm El Cyclone from Bolivia.
Recording, sir.
One-man gang. This is my domain. Don't give me no gas. I'll jump on your face, tattoo your chromosomes. This is basic math, but basic math is too easy for you burros. So I'm going to teach you algebra because I'm the champ. And if the only thing you know how to do is add and subtract, you'll only be prepared to do one thing, pump gas.
Hey, ripping off a gas station is better than working at one, you know?
Ale. Orale. I'm a tough guy. Tough guys don't do math. Tough guys deep fried chicken for a living. So orale. You want a wing or a leg, man? Whoever heard of negative and positive numbers? Anybody?
Yeah, negative numbers are like unemployment. 10 million people out of work, that's a negative number.
We're gonna need a lot of Kleenexes. There's gonna be a lot of bloodshed. You ever been to the beach?
Yeah.
You ever play with the sand? Finger man. Come on. You ever dig a hole? The sand that comes out of the hole, that's a positive. The hole is a negative. That's it. Simple. Anybody can do it. -2 plus 2 equals. Nethead. Orale. Answer it. Come on, you know the answer. -2 plus 2, fill the hole. If I had that on my hands, I wouldn't raise it either. Orale. Come on, a -2 plus 2 equals. Anybody can do it. Fill the hole. -2 plus 2 equals. Come on, just fill the hole. You can do it. You're gonna let these burros laugh at you. -2 plus 2 equals. Working that like a toothpick. Orale.
0.
0. You're right. Simple. That's it. -2 plus 2 equals 0. You just fill the hole. Did you know that neither the Greeks nor the Romans were capable of using the concept of 0? It was your ancestors, the Mayas, who first contemplated the 0, the absence of value. True story. You burros have math in your blood.
Hey, Kimo sabe todo, the man knows everything. Órale. Kimo sabe.
Orale. Okay. Parentheses means multiply. Every time you see this, you multiply. A negative times a negative equals a positive. A negative times a negative equals a positive. Say it. A negative times a negative equals a positive. Say it. A negative times a negative equals a positive. Again. A negative times a negative equals a positive. A negative times a negative equals a positive. I can't hear you.
A negative times a negative equals a positive.
Louder. A negative times a negative equals a positive. Louder. A negative times a negative equals a positive. Why? Everybody look at the board. Will someone please read for me what's on the board? Anybody?
Juan has 5 times as many girlfriends as Pedro. Carlos has 1 girlfriend less than Pedro. If the total number of girlfriends between them is 20, how many does each gigolo have?
Okay. Okay, okay. How many girlfriends does each gigolo have? Anybody? You think you got it, Einstein? You think you're gonna do it?
Juan is X, Carlos is Y, Pedro is X plus Y. Is Pedro bisexual or what?
I have a terrible feeling about you.
Yeah. 5x equals Juan's girlfriends?
You're good now, but you're gonna end up barefoot, pregnant, and in the kitchen.
Can you get negative girlfriends?
No, just negative boyfriends. Please forgive them, for they know not what they do.
Carlos has X minus 5 girlfriends, que no?
Que no is right. Que no. The answer to my prayers
May I go to the restroom, please?
In 10 minutes. Hold it. Senor Maya, hit it.
It's a trick problem, Mr. Kimmel. You can't solve it unless you know how many girlfriends they have in common, right?
It's not that they're stupid. It's just they don't know anything.
Well,
X equals Pedro's girlfriends. 5x equals Juan's girlfriends. X minus 1 equals Carlos's girlfriends. X plus 5x plus x minus 1 equals 20, so x equals 3.
Good to see you.
We've actually already discussed the launch in class, and I mentioned the idea that it's really important that you consider how many minutes the activities take. Also make sure that you have all students get involved with this launch. You can look at these lesson plan sponges as some ideas in order to think of launches or a focus to your lesson. And then I also gave some other examples of activities and how you can just use certain things by having students compare things into their own lives, from their own lives. Notice that each one of these examples has their own lives. This way the students will be able to take what they know from their own current experiences, and they're able, from those experiences, to relate to the topic that you're talking about. The next area is the area of instruction. And just like the launch, the area of instruction also includes the minutes and how it will tie into your minutes. You can also indicate the different multiple intelligences that the instruction covers, as well as how it aligns to the objectives. In this case, this is how your actual instructional strategies. So when you're writing it, I want you to write it from a student-centered approach. So instead of saying the teacher will show a PowerPoint presentation, instead what I want you to do is I want you to indicate what students will be doing. Students will be reviewing a PowerPoint presentation. Don't start off with what the teacher will be doing, but indicate what the students will be doing. You need to make sure that you're as detail-oriented as you can. It's almost like a task analysis where you're actually going through step by step exactly what you want the students to do. An administrator or a substitute teacher should be able to look at those lesson plans and know exactly what you want them to do. By having your instructions be detailed and being detail-oriented, it's going to be good for you and positive for you all the way around. Some of the questions that you should ask yourself when you're developing your instructional strategies is, what do you plan to do to engage your students in developing understanding of the lesson objectives? Also, how will you link the new content, like the skills and concepts they'll be learning, to the students' prior academic learning, as well as their personal and cultural and community assets? Also, what will you say or do? What questions will you ask? When you're developing your lesson plans, I want you to actually write out the questions. Already think about what questions you plan to ask. Even if you're one of those people that likes to think of things on the cuff or off the cuff, in this case, when you're developing your lesson plans in this class, I want you to think of these questions beforehand and put them down, write them down in your lesson plans. Also, if you're going to be giving any kind of grades to students, you want to make sure that you put the grades or how many points things will be. And in this case, with your informal and formal assessments, I do want you to have points associated with each of those, even the informal. And the reason for that is it helps you keep your students accountable. If you don't associate points with your activities, then students might not be motivated to do it. So it's really important that you include points, even if you just look them over briefly and check them off on a checklist. At least then you'll make the students accountable. So some other questions would be, how will you engage your students to help them understand the concepts? What will your students do? And how will you determine if the students are meeting the intended learning objectives? Remember, no matter what you do when you're teaching, it's better to overplan than to underplan. So make sure that you try to plan more information than less information. And this way, if class runs over or if students are doing need enrichment activities or other things to do, you'll be able to provide some additional information, and you never have to sit there at the and let the class go without any kind of instruction. It's kind of welcoming chaos. The next part of the lesson plan is the structured practice and application. This is set up just like the launch, as well as with the instruction. You'll notice that you have to include the minutes, try to indicate how it aligns to your standards or your objectives, and also aligns to the multiple intelligence. So in this part, what you're going to do is you're giving students the opportunities to practice what they've been learning. So you give them ways that they can demonstrate. It could be working on a worksheet. It could be working in a small group. It could be doing research on a computer or in the computer lab. It could be a variety of different ideas. But what you're doing is you, the teacher, are structuring opportunities so students can practice and apply what you taught them. You need to make sure that you have some type of practice and application in every lesson that you do. Remember, a lesson doesn't have to be one day. It can be more than one day. So if you think it's important for students to practice certain concepts or apply certain facts or concepts, give it as much time as you need. This activity allows you to see what students understand and how they can apply it. It's really important when you're talking about meeting your lesson plan goals. The last part is the closure. And in the closure, once again, you have to indicate how many minutes, but you're trying to drive home the important parts of the lesson. So in this case, you might have some kind of a review or a review game. You might have questions that you ask your students, which again, you'll write down in your lesson plan, not just say, I'm going to ask questions, but indicate what questions. You might have a ticket out the door activity, or you can use all of those other informal assessments that we looked at earlier in that one handout. So based on those facts, your lesson plan is almost complete. The next and last part would be your differentiated and planned support. What you're going to need to do is, I want you to, when you're thinking about your lesson and you're thinking about your class as a whole, how do you plan to make the lesson cater to different audiences? Or how do you consider different multiple intelligences? It might be that your lesson has different components that reaches different learning styles. And also, you might be grouping students with similar needs to do different activities. You might address individual students by walking around the room and giving additional support. With students with IEPs or 504 plans, you might be providing special circumstances like extra notes or providing them with other resources, additional handouts or worksheets. But you want to make sure that you give not just a generic response, but kind of a detailed response, or at least some suggestions on how you would address these different groups. And then also, if you can indicate some strategies for responding to common errors or misunderstandings, and that could basically just indicating the fact that if something is misunderstood or there's some kinds of errors that can be found, that you plan to address them and how you plan to address them. Maybe by reviewing or going over or spending additional time in a following class or whatever it might be. And then the last but not least would be your materials. What I want you to think about is the materials that you're going to be having in each of your, or that you need for the lesson. So you need to write down everything that you need as a teacher and everything your students need in order to do the lesson or to be successful in the lesson. It could be using technology, software, other peripheral devices, paper, pens, handouts, specific copies of handouts, how many copies you might need. And the one thing that is important, because it's easier to read and to see at a glance, is to bullet point these materials. Don't just put it down in a paragraph format. Finally, there's a section on the lesson plan called resources. And resources are also known as lesson artifacts. And this is something that you're going to need for each lesson. And you're going to need to have at least 3 resources or lesson artifacts per lesson. So if you say within your lesson that you're going to be giving a PowerPoint presentation, you need to make sure that you create a PowerPoint presentation that you can attach along with this lesson plan. If you have a handout or a worksheet, or if you have a quiz, or if they're going to be watching some type of a video, and you have questions for the video, these are things that are called resources and lesson artifacts. And you'll see those in the examples. Here's some examples of some of the resources. It could be worksheets, guided notes, PowerPoint presentations, grading rubrics, project sheets, video notes, debate details, role-playing guidelines, surveys, wikis, blogs, podcasts, quizzes, expectation sheets, tests, sample work examples. But regardless of any of these, you need to have at least 3 artifacts per lesson, and that's reinforcing what you're saying in the lesson. Now, if you say, oh, but I don't have 3 resources in my lesson, that means that you need to add on to your lesson so that you include at least 3 resources that your students will be able to engage in, whether it be, again, presentations, worksheets, surveys, instructions to complete wikis or blogs, or anything like that. So now that you've gone through that, you are ready to begin. Voila, there you go. I want you to make sure that you don't limit your lesson planning ideas based on available resources at individual schools. I want you to imagine you have every resource you will need, that you almost have like a lesson planning utopia. Also, make sure that you use different instruction, different launches, different informal assessments, different formal assessments, so that each lesson plan is unique and different. Also, make sure you look at the examples that I've included for these lesson plans. I hope this helps and gives you a good idea. I'll be giving you more information in the upcoming classes. All right, have a great night. Good night.